You know, the only thing creepier than somebody being angry and making a frowny face is a smile. So it's been a couple weeks since it's been out in theaters, but I finally got around to seeing the film Smile, which is still in theaters right now. And welcome to my review of that film. The movie is still in theaters, so you can still go see it. And I do recommend that you do if this movie is for you. Now, is it for you? I'm going to tell you in just a moment. So I want to discuss the film Smile. We're not going to go into spoilers. Okay, we're not going to talk about that here because the movie is best seen with no spoilers. I did avoid them as much as possible. This was a quality horror film. It features the writer-director debut of director Parker Finn. This is his first movie he's ever put out. And even though he's not quite on the level of guys like Jordan Peele and guys like Ari Aster, because they've made more than one film, he's definitely on his way with Smile. This was a tremendous, tremendous first film. It's a first film. Now, this was based on a short film called Laura Hasn't Slept, which I have not watched. So the film takes the psychological horror genre to a different degree where an actual psychologist, a therapist, ends up dealing with something that in most movies, the therapist is the one that says, hey, this person is suffering from psychosis, they're crazy, but instead, here, what happens if the therapist is the one that's having these horror supernatural issues? So this movie is really good at blending both supernatural horror and gore. I'm going to say this right off the hop here. The movie, I think, is extremely well done. It utilizes its jump scares effectively in a transitional way to where it makes sense. They're shocking. They're very well done and spaced out. It has a psychological atmosphere around it and a real horror, a horrific, I know it's a horror movie, but you know what I mean. It's got a real horrific sense to it and a real sense of dread following the main character, as well as it also has a lot of gore. It doesn't have gore for the sake of gore, but there are scenes in this film that are realistically gory, featuring the human body being, having sharp objects used on it, including one suicide scene in this film that was so gruesome that even I had to turn for a second. Like, I turned my head, man, and I watch these movies all the time. You know what I mean? So the reason why I'm telling you that's because if you are very queasy to that kind of stuff, just be aware. If you got kids, again, be aware. This is not like a psychological horror where I feel like, it's not really going to show like gore or cut away. No, this movie does not cut away. And it actually helps because it makes the movie even more horrific. So the film stars Sosie Bacon, who plays a therapist who witnesses one of her patients commit a very strange act that I don't want to spoil. And as a result of that, she begins to go through these strange experiences, and she's trying to figure out what to do about it while also trying to make sure she's not crazy, make sure that she's not going nuts, even though the whole world tells her that they think she's nuts, even though she is somebody who diagnoses people who are head cases. What happens if a therapist becomes one herself? Now, one of the things I love about this film, without going into spoilers, is that it really does a great service to the importance of trauma. Obviously, this is a fictional story with a fictional supernatural entity, but it actually has a meaning to it, and that is the fact that trauma creates traumatic people. People in the real world commit bad deeds and do bad things, oftentimes not because they're necessarily narcissistic, sociopathic, or psychopathic, even though those are also mental illnesses. It's because they come from a history of trauma. They witnessed something in their childhood. They witnessed something in, when they were a teenager, or something traumatic happened to them that sort of led their life down a pathway that they have to go in therapy to oftentimes fix. I know this as being somebody who's been in therapy for a couple of years, that even if it's like, I've never witnessed a murder in my own face, or I've never seen a rape actually happen in front of me, but I've had traumatic things happen, and sometimes it's not necessarily something like what you would see in a film. You know what I mean? Whereas here we're dealing with a therapist who really, sees people all the time come in with crazy stories. But what happens when she becomes a part of it? And the trauma aspect and trauma bonding is a big, big layer to this movie. So again, I want to just warn you that it is extremely psychological. It's deep. It also has really good jump scares. They kind of tried to balance things out by giving you a little bit of everything. Now, oftentimes when filmmakers try to do this, it ends up backfiring. I think Halloween Ends is a great example of a movie that had too many cooks in the kitchen. However, in this movie, you could tell that Parker Finn, the writer-director, he sat there and he thought about, okay, how can I tell this story, horrify people, but also have them thinking? Also have them thinking about what's happening after they leave the film, and he successfully did it. Now, it's been compared a lot to movies like It Follows and The Ring. Now, I will say this about those two movies. I do think that Smile is much better than It Follows. I was never super into It Follows. Yes, I did like it. I didn't love it. It's a one and done for me. The Ring is a classic. Same thing with the Japanese counterpart Ringu. There are similarities there, but I feel like this movie, with Ring, I think the horror aspect is sort of like that time limit and that sort of one note scare of the girl coming through the screen. Whereas with Smile, it's a lot deeper than that, because what happens when the entity, when the evil demon, spirit, whatever you want to call it, the enemy that is, what happens when it's inside your head? How can you get it out? And I don't mean in a way like what, Malignant did. I'm not literally inside of your head via surgery. I mean in your brain. So it really has sort of like a double whammy, a double meaning, in that the movie is a great example of how hurt people hurt other people and hurt themselves, while also, with that kind of extended metaphor, while also just being a straight up good horror movie. And there are some visuals in this movie that are definitely horrific, not just the gore, but the way that there's certain scares and certain, I don't want to spoil it. So I'm just going to say visuals. There are certain scenes that are like terrifying, and of course, like with most of these horror films, the main character has to figure out what's going on and how to fix it. Every horror movie has something like that, right? And of course, the whole world doesn't, they don't believe her, or they think she's crazy, except for like the one person who does. And as you start to go down the rabbit hole, you start to figure out like, okay, what's going on and how can we stop it with the main character? And really, a lot of this has to do with Sosie Bacon's performance. I thought she did a phenomenal job. She carried the film. She really carried the film. Also, the film co-stars Caitlin Stacer. Cal Penn Kumar is in this film. It was good to see him there. Robin Weiger. There's a few different actors here, but really the head and shoulders of the movie lays on Sosie Bacon. And it's one of those movies where, as you approach the third act, if you've seen a lot of horror movies, it can only go one of like three ways, right? Like, they've only got like 2 or 3 ways they can fix this and bring the movie to a satisfying end. And as you watch the movie, it fucks with you because you think you're going to get ending A or ending B, but instead you get ending C, which you kind of saw coming, but you really weren't sure. That's for like the horror fans that have seen a lot of these movies. You can kind of figure out what they're going to try to do, and they go in that direction, but then something else happens. So it does a real good job in sort of making you guess what's real and what's fiction and what's just a premonition, a vision. The movie is really good at doing that. Just a very well-made film, and it's not just a jump scares movie. It really is an effective horror movie, and one of my favorite new horror movies that I've seen this year. I hope it does not become a franchise. I feel like it's made so much money, bro. It made $175 million, or no, $130 million, something like that. And the movie didn't even cost $20. So I have a feeling that they're going to end up making sequels, which, to be honest, it does not need sequels. It doesn't, but I think they're going to do it. I kind of know how it's going to go down. I might do a video about how it's going to go down, but at the same time, like, I don't want them to. I think the movie stands on its own. So those are my thoughts on Smile. Great work by Parker Finn. I look forward to seeing more of his work, and I hope we do get more of it because this was a home run. So anyways, take care of yourself. Have a good day. Let me know what you thought of the movie if you saw it, and if you haven't seen it, go see it. This month, it is horror month. You might as well go. Take care.